people, I think, are very scared of disappointing clients or people getting upset or whatever the case may be. But to your point, it's just you set that expectation on the front of, hey, this is a possibility.
I like to set expectations ahead of time because when you're handling these objections before they come up, then you don't have to worry about like that confrontation later on. A really good quote that I heard once: unspoken expectations are premeditated resentments.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And yeah, let that one sink in. It kind of gut punches you, but it's true. And it's true in your personal life and in your business life as well.
Thanks for joining us on the CSP Hot Hands 60 Minutes of Fire podcast. My name is Brett Wiggins and I get to serve as your host. So what is a CSP? CSP is a Cutco sales professional. There are a lot of them out there, and they've all got a different answer to the question, why do you sell so much? Our mission is to find out the answer to that question from as many of them as possible. These next 60 minutes are designed for Cutco sales reps who desire to learn from our best in the field. So we interview top sales professionals from around the country with questions provided by their peers to make all that happen. 60 minutes of fire means we get straight to the point. Let's do it. Okay, gang, welcome to CSP Hot Hands 60 Minutes of Fire. We're on episode number 17, and I am so excited for our guest today. From the often forgotten part of our amazing United States of America, Peyton Kellar from our Anchorage office and Washington, Alaska division. So excited to have her on today. Anytime she references a resource that's available to us, she'll share it with me afterwards. We don't take our time doing that right now, but we'll put it in our resource folder for you. And Peyton, if you have end up answering any questions with like a script or a template, don't feel the need to cover it in detail right now, so we can spend the bulk of our time on the hard hitting questions from our CSP community they put together for you. I do want to directly thank those who had questions selected for this episode. It would not be very fire without their help. Peyton, it'd be more like a rep's first demo and they use the paring knife to cut a tomato. Just not great. So Benji Lehman and Chelsea McDougall, thank you so much for your submissions and having them selected. Peyton, are you ready to jam?
I'm ready.
All right, let's do it. So first foremost, how long have you been selling Cutco?
I've been selling Cutco for a little over 7 years now.
Oh, awesome. Okay. And what does your yearly sales breakdown for the year typically look like? So what percentage is at the booth? What percentage is service? Is there any gifting in there? What's that breakdown look like typically?
Yeah, so it's a really interesting question because my business is like constantly changing.
Right. And especially 7 years in, it's still like you're still figuring out what you even want it to look like, probably, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm bringing more gifting in this year than I did last year, but I did some last year. And last year I focused more on business gifting. This year I have a lot more real estate agents. So there's a lot of moving pieces, but I would say a big bulk of my business per year is going to be coming from events and service calls. I hardly ever do demos anymore, unless they're at the booth, of course.
Sure.
But yeah, most of it's coming from events and service calls right now.
So events, service calls, and it sounds like last year was your first year in like, hey, I'm going to make gifting a layer, and now we're creating that. I feel like at the beginning of this year, there was more buzz around gifting than I've ever like felt from the CSP community. Any tips on somebody real quick, just on like they're trying to develop that gifting layer, since you're like kind of fresh off of that? Any tips on for somebody that's an events rep, but they're also trying to create that gifting layer?
Yeah, my biggest needle mover with the gifting side of it has truly been Kristen Stayback, being on her team. She's just got a
Kristen fan. I was just in Costa Rica with her this past weekend for our region trip. And fun fact, Kristen started in Indiana, not with me, but was one of my best friends reps. So she big Kristen Stayback fan. So you've been doing coaching with her?
Yeah, so I've been on Kristen's team now for a little over 2 years because she was actually virtually taking care of Alaska for gifting for a long time. And then when I started adding in that layer, she just had me join her team, and so that she could kind of help me with where she's already gotten to in Alaska. But yeah, that's been my biggest needle mover with gifting is having someone who's in the business who cares about like their team and growing their team. And so she puts a lot of effort into me and teaches me a lot and answers questions over voice messages all the time.
Shout out Kristen, friend of the show. She cares a lot. She wants it.
Yeah.
She wants it to be good, and she really cares about her clients and cares about people on her team. That's awesome. What titles do you have in life outside of being a Cutco sales professional?
Oh man, I wear a lot of caps. I think my biggest and proudest title that I have is I'm a mom of two kids. I'm a single
Awesome.
mom of two kids.
How old are the kiddos?
My kids are 7 and 5.
Oh, no way. Okay, so I have a 7 and a 5-year-old as well. And then we have a couple more littles, but we have 2 girls. Are you girl, boy, 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 girl, girl?
I was blessed with boy, girl.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, I had my son when I was 18. And then my
So
daughter.
it sounds like it was that and then Cutco right away after the birth of your son.
Yeah, so I I have a really fun story.
Please.
When I started, my son was 3 months old when I started selling Cutco.
Were you like baby on the hip on demos? Like, oh, that's so awesome. That's so fantastic.
But also like I paid my dues. I paid the dues of like writing on paper order forms, like a lot of our seasoned reps. We paid our dues. And so I have photos of like my first summer and my customers that I still talk to, still service for today, holding my son in their arms and their paper receipt.
That's so great. That's so awesome. There's got to be like now is your 5-year-old in school during the day yet?
Yeah,
so there's got to be something like wow, this job's never been easier. I am not holding anyone. This is great. I can just imagine the hours of phone time with yelling children in the background. And I mean, gosh, it's like being a dad while I'm away from the house sometimes during the day. But I can't imagine how great your focus has been developed during that. That's so cool. Well, good for you. That's fantastic. So this was, and when you first got the job at Cutco as a single mom, 3-month-old, like what was it like hey, this could be a forever thing? It was like, I just need some cash now. We're going to give this a shot.
Well, so the whole reason that I even decided to start looking for work was like, I was obviously at this point at 18 years old, I was young, I was living with family. At the time I wasn't single. Dad was still in our life. Okay. And it was just like, there's not enough money for us to move to our own place. And so I looked for a job on Craigslist. I'm a Craigslist rep.
Hey, let's go.
Hey. And I was just like, I need a job that allows me to be a full-time mom, but also allows the income. And after going to the interview, I like had this light bulb moment as my manager wrote out the pay scale and the commission. And I was like, that's it. That's how I break the cycle. That's how I get out of like the whole, what I went through in my childhood and my parents. And I was like, that's it. That's how I get to do my number one job, which is be fully present with my children or child at the time. And that's how I make the income to have the lifestyle that I want. Like it's based off of my effort. And I've always put in that like effort to get what I want in return.
Oh, good for you. 3 months in being like, okay, solution time. Like, let's go. And clearly you were in, you were all in. Last fun thing you did besides slinging blades.
I do fun things all the time. I mean, I go dancing, I go climbing. Oh, cool. I do fun stuff all the time. My latest travel, I went to Oregon over the summer. Sweet. And it was a total fun personal trip to go hiking and exploring. And it just filled my soul with happiness.
Dude, nature will do that. It absolutely positive. You also brought up dancing. My pilot sales manager, Olia, had a salsa class she did all throughout the fall and spring. I think it was every Thursday night. And I've been one to just always make up my own dance moves, and it doesn't always look great, but I could probably benefit from some dance classes. Yeah. Best year ever for CPO, Peyton. What was it?
44.
Awesome. And what's something like in the works right now for you? Maybe it's an order, a program, a layer of your business you're really, really excited about. Maybe a business relationship within gifting that you've been working on. What's something that you're working on that you're excited about?
Yeah. I guess in the business, what I'm really excited about is the consistent follow-up I've had with leads this year. So I just had our Alaska State Fair, did really, really well, and got to see a lot of potential of what I can create. Sometimes I've had some limiting beliefs on what I'm capable of doing, and I've seen a lot of return of investment
Mm.
from just doing follow-up and working with real estate agents and business owners. So that's kind of my next thing, is just asking those questions. Do you own a business, and working the gifting layer? That's going to be my needle mover for the fall and into the spring.
Yeah, you brought up follow up, and I think it's amazing to me how many times I talk to somebody about how many leads they generated at a show or whatever the case may be, and then months later it's like, well, I still got to follow up with some of those. And was there a breakthrough moment for you with that? Or was it just stay committed to the process and keep following up? Was there anything that changed your performance in that area over the past couple of years?
Yeah, actually, I was just talking to Kristen about this, because Kristen is awesome and gives so much grace. And for the last couple of years, I have not been doing great follow up, and I have not been doing great in the gifting world. And it's at my own fault of, things going on. But one thing that I told her is, like, I'm finally to a point where I'm receptive. Like, I'm in a place where my personal and my business foundation is strong enough and sturdy enough to add in that next layer.
Mm.
And so, like you said, just staying committed to that process. And everyone says at every conference, they're like, if you just do the follow up, if you do this, and it's all the answers we have as CSPs. There's no lack of answers to what we want to do with our business. It's just when we actually make that commitment to do it. And that's my new one, is just making that commitment to do the work. And so far, it's been great. I had 3 one-on-ones in the course of 2 weeks, and all 3 orders were over $3,000 on
Nice.
a reorder for next year. And it was simple and easy and less
So
than
if
an hour.
there's a CSP out there listening and they're going, man, been in net X amount of times, I listened to the podcast, do all this, and keep hearing follow up. I'm waiting for that magic answer that's not just keep following up. And you're telling me that's the answer. That's the magic.
The answer is just to pick up the phone and call.
So I was telling you earlier, we identified service as one of our biggest area of opportunities for the CSPs in my division anyway. And recently, this was, I don't know, a week or 2 ago, they all made goals based on non-booth CPO that we were going to hold each other accountable to the rest of this year. So we've got quite a few questions for you on that topic of service. And one of them was, how do you decide which times of the year you're going to focus on service? Or is it like, hey, it's a year round, it really doesn't change, it's consistent? What is it consistent? Is it certain times of the year? And if it is certain times of the year, when and why?
So are you asking when I focus on like service calls or service in general in my business?
Service in general in your business. And if it's service events, if it's service calls, what time of the year is that you kind of really focus on that specifically?
There's no specific time. Service always comes first in my business, whether I'm talking to a gifting client, or I'm talking to a residential client, a new client. Like, service is always going to come first. And that's kind of how I run my business. And I've learned over the last couple of years of working with business owners, the most successful businesses are those who put their people first. And so service is like the main foundation of my entire Cutco career, is making sure that I'm taking care of my people. Now, you do have to learn boundaries and learn, like, not to allow your customers to step on you, or and not to have those boundaries crossed. But for the most part, I find myself doing these little things that are a little bit out of my way, if I'm able to, to ensure that my clients feel taken care of, because what we do is not an emergency. Thank you again, Kristen, for teaching me that. We sell knives. It's not ever an emergency. If your client ever texts you and says it's an emergency, it's not.
Yeah. Yeah. They must have you confused with their doctor. Wrong speed dial.
Exactly.
Got it. Okay.
Exactly. So, what we do is not an emergency, but we do play an important role. And if we play our role well, then we're doing right by our people. And it's like, if you can just do right with where you're at, your job is to, provide excellent service to your clients. That's what I do.
I love that. So if I'm sitting there going, okay, when am I gonna, I don't think anybody does this on purpose, right? But okay, when am I actually gonna focus on servicing my clients, providing? Well, that's the first mistake. You're service first. Now, when it comes to service calls, specifically service events, are there certain times of the year that you provide more focus on those specific functions?
Yeah. So for service calls, service events, when I'm providing the most of that is, truthfully, it's when my schedule allows. So what my year kind of looks like is January, February, we have no shows. It's Alaska. It's very cold.
You mean nobody's going out, traveling around, wanting to look at vendors and stuff? Okay, got it.
No. We stay in our homes with our coffee mugs and just stay warm. So during that time is when I really focus on gifting. It's a really great time because people are still running businesses. They're just not out shopping. So that's a really great time to focus on the service side of gifting and reaching out to your gifting clients, and at least in Alaska. And then March and April start ramping up for my show season. And then we go into a lot of service calls during that area as well, because we're doing events that are up in Fairbanks and then down on the Kenai Peninsula of Alaska. And so we'll put a lot of focus into our events then and our service then. Summer, interesting enough, is actually really kind of slow for us unless we are intentional about it. Again, that's a really great time for me to focus on gifting.
Yeah.
Because during summer, Alaska really only gets 3 months. So everyone's maximizing their summer fishing.
So that there's a lot of outdoor activity, a lot of trips, a lot of,
Yeah. So service actually goes down during that time, but it's a really important time to make sure that you're still reaching out and providing, that service. One example is fishing knives. I have extra fishing blades on hand for a reason, because people are going out fishing. They're like, Peyton, I broke my blade. So being able to provide service like that is something that's
such a great, hey, I'll figure out sending it back to only and everything on the back end. Here's your blade, go back out. That's great.
Exactly.
Was there a point in time where you were nervous to even invest in extra blades, like something like that? And when did you realize okay, this is a win-win, me thinking ahead on this?
I realized that pretty quickly. My first outdoor show was in March of 2018. And I learned pretty quickly, and I always kind of knew Alaska took fishing season very seriously, because I do too.
Sure.
But that was when I was like, okay, this is pretty serious. People do really put a lot of time and energy. And ultimately it comes down to, it's not just a fishing knife. It's their fishing knife that they clean hundreds of fish to fill their freezer for the winter for their family. It's not just a sport thing. And so when I started tying in people's real lives to what I'm providing, I was like, okay, this is where I need to make my investment so that I can show that I actually care, that I'm available and there to provide that service for my clients.
Every area probably has an example of that for their clientele, for who they're working with. And I think that we've just got to stay with our ears up and listening, hey, what do these people actually need? What are they going to be doing with this? So I can really provide something great for them. You mentioned certain times of year you're traveling to go to certain shows and whatever the case may be. And, while I have not been to Alaska, I think there's a lot of remote areas that, they're far away from where you might have a client, but that's not anywhere close to where you live or you're going to frequent. How do you decide where to offer a service event, how far to be willing to drive for a service call, or, how do you create expectations around that type of stuff when people do live really far away from you?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So my business probably looks a lot different than those who probably live in other cities where
Mhm.
population's much higher. So Anchorage, for example, from my house is 51 miles. It's roughly an hour, sometimes an hour and a half if I'm going all the way to the other side of town. And typically what I do for my Anchorage clients is I schedule a whole day. And by a whole day, I mean no less than 3 appointments.
Mhm.
And if by the time that I get there to that day, if I don't have 3 appointments and a Costco trip planned for Anchorage, then I do call them and I let them know that ahead of time. And I'm like, hey, just so you know, I try to book up my days in Anchorage. If I don't end up filling my day, I'll give you a shout the day before or 2 days before, and we'll move you to a different Anchorage day if you're flexible.
Working with Trent Booth and the Veritas Leadership Group over the last decade has unlocked things within me that I never knew existed until they were coached out of me. If you're listening and you feel stuck or like you have another gear that you're having a hard time getting to, Trent's offering a free intro call to any of our listeners. I love Veritas because it's an amazing combo of mentoring and coaching. I get what I need when I need it most. It's also a flat monthly rate, which is awesome for anyone looking to give it a shot with no contract and no long-term commitment. Schedule a call with Trent today by going to linktree/CSP60. That's linktr.ee/CSP60. That's linktree/CSP60 with a dot before the two E's. That's awesome. I think people I think are very scared of disappointing clients or people getting upset or whatever the case may be. But to your point, it's just you set that expectation on the front of, hey, this is a possibility. And then, hey, are you still willing? They know I'm booking this knowing there's a chance Peyton's going to call me the day before. Has the response to that been helpful for you? I mean, have clients been in general pretty understanding about those types of things?
Oh yeah. I got to say, Alaska's kind of a different area. The people are pretty forgiving and awesome. But yeah, I set that expectation ahead of time. I like to set expectations ahead of time because when you're handling these objections before they come up, then you don't have to worry about like that confrontation later on. I think a really good quote that I heard once, it was a personal life quote, and it was unspoken expectations are premeditated resentments.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And yeah, let that one sink in. It kind of gut punches you, but it's true. And it's true in your personal life and in your business life as well. You know, if you let your clients know ahead of time, this is what to expect. And I do that with Mrs. Jones, you're under no pressure or obligation to buy anything new. But just so you know, I do sell Cutco for a living.
Yeah.
I'm going to show you stuff. Like they know I'm going to show them things. They know I'm going to do these things. And then that way no one's thrown off guard. Everyone knows what's happening. Expectations are set.
Yeah, those 20 to 30 seconds of courage, just say the thing, like just be direct, be honest. And then after that, it's easy, right? But gotta say the thing. That brings up another question that we got from our team was, do you feel like, are you pitching while you're sharpening? Are you separating the two of like, okay, I'm going to sharpen their knives, make sure they're taken care of, and then go into my pitch? Is it all kind of one thing of synergy between both, or does it always look different?
I've been kind of analyzing this a little more in my business lately because it does start to look a little different from appointment to appointment. There's some people who know when I come over that they're going to buy something, and so they're asking like, "Hey, can I see your catalog?" Hey, you don't want to be like, no, it's not time. Yeah, like so, it's going to look different on those clearly. Exactly. Sometimes it is. Sometimes I do say no. Sometimes I'm like, well, I do have a catalog, but you can't see it yet. That's a fun game, though. That game is fun. Yeah, it is. It's fun. And so I get to tell them, I'm like, I do have a catalog, but we're right on schedule today. We're ahead of schedule today. So I'm going to take care of your knives first. Yeah. Then you can see the new stuff. But I do try to like tie it all in. The whole goal of like providing that service is I do tell them like I'm going to provide service first and make recommendations based off of the wear and tear of your knives and the things that you tell me. Got it. And I do. I mean, it's pretty simple what to recommend to people.
Yep.
But yeah, I provide that service. It's kind of the whole thing is providing service and then building that trust with my client while sharpening with them or while on the phone with them. That transparency and building the trust and providing that service is what makes them trust me when it gets time for those big numbers that I'm presenting.
Also, you're able to tie your recommendations to real life examples that you just found through servicing their knives or finding out what they're using. Certainly, like my example earlier, using the paring knife for the tomato. Not a great option, Karen. Okay, not good. We got to fix that. So that makes sense to me. But then also, I love your answer of like it does look different because every situation is different. There's no cookie cutter. Okay, every single time it should look like this. We're probably missing opportunities and not listening very well if every single one looks exactly the same. When it comes to service requests, getting leads, collecting leads at an event, what are some best practices collecting leads at the booth? What do you feel like you do that helps you be able to really make the most out of those?
Yeah, just getting the leads. People really do like service. And if that's like where your intention is, I would say that's probably the reason why people like to work with me is I really do put their best interest first. Have you had your knife sharpened? We recommend our in-home service every 2 to 3 years. Has it been done in that time? And then they make this face, and I kind of make it funny. There's most people who are like, no, we've had them for 10 years and haven't had them sharpened. And I'm like, well, you're a bit overdue, honey. And I make it fun and energetic. And it's like, well, let me go ahead and take your name and number. I'll call you when I'm in your area or when I've got a service event in your area. And I think it just comes down to making it fun and making it a service that you're providing. And if they say, well, you're just trying to come out and sell me something, I'm like, well, I mean, yeah, if you want to buy something when I come out, absolutely. I sell Cutco for a living, but I would really just like to take care of your knives so that you can enjoy the fulfillment of your investment that you made X amount of years ago.
And I think they can feel that authenticity from you. Like I can tell, like it really is important to you to make sure you take care of them from that aspect as well. Do you ever, is there ever a time when you direct schedule versus collecting info and calling back? And if so, when do you make that distinction?
Yeah, for a couple, when the couple is there together, I'm all about direct scheduling. And that's something that I've been coaching my events team in is direct scheduling because it does take away a lot of that phone time. I do have the luxury now of my children being in school and daycare where I don't have the screaming in the background.
Yep.
But I will say there were a lot of times that I had phone time in my car away from my children. And it just makes it easier and takes the time away, from your future week that you have to put into phone time. And so if you've got a couple in front of you, I would say, hey, if you'd like, and you've got your calendar on you, we can go ahead and just stay away from that phone tag thing and get you on the schedule now.
Oh, that for me, that word phone tag makes me cringe. So it's like, if I'm your client, I'm like, yes, let's get it scheduled now because it's not going to happen elsewise. Yeah, and as an events coordinator, I just want to say shout out all events coordinators out there. I think there's so much like the unsung heroes of the CSP and CSP candidate community. There's so much good stuff that you guys do that, quite frankly, probably isn't reflected in recognition or income or so many other things. You guys are some of the absolute most important but people that I'm most appreciative of throughout the company. So seriously, thanks for all you do with your events team. Any expectations when you collect a lead based on area or where they're from or how quickly they need service? How do you feel like you create expectations so that way they're not expecting too much out of you, but at the same time, you're kind of coaching them on what this process is going to look like?
Yeah, I like that you use the word coaching because it really is. It's like, you're teaching your clients what to expect from you. And that's really important. I think that's where it comes back to what I had said about boundaries and setting those expectations and boundaries with clients so that they know what to expect from you long-term. And that's the whole goal, right? Is to have your clients long-term. So what to expect long-term from you. So when I'm at the booth and I'm, let's just say it's my April events. I have so many shows in April. I have a pretty small events team. We work a lot. We get a lot of leads. And there's sometimes I don't get to these people until July, like based off of their schedules and mine. Just like there's a ton going on. And so I tell them, I'm like, first I ask, is there anything that needs to be taken care of before fishing season? So then that way I know who my priority people are. Do we have any gifting occasions coming up where we're going to need gifts in the next month to 2 months? Then I also know that that's something where I need to, prioritize that client so that I can get them their gifts on time. But for the
I love those two questions because they're you're taking care of, you're making them think about stuff that they haven't even thought of yet. B, you're really creating their wish list for them before you even get there. So you're going in with an expectation of what you're going to spend time on. Like, I love that because it really is a win-win.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It is. It's planting the seed and collecting information at the same time. And then, so for most people, I'm just like, okay, so I've got your name and number here. I'll call you when I'm in your area. Now, this could take anywhere between 2 to 4 weeks before I'm able to get you on the schedule. And then we'll just go based off of when you're available. And the other part is, for people who are far away, I tell them, I have a show down on the Kenai Peninsula in mid-May. So what I'll do is I'll put you on my call list for when I'm coming down. And if I'm going to be doing a service event, I'll, of course, get them on my link, have them schedule. Or if I'm going to do in-home appointments, I call those people first before I get down to the show. And that's a great way to do out-of-town business, is to already have a schedule ahead. And that's one thing I preach to my team is don't bank on your show. Your booth sales are not always
takes all the pressure off of your time at the booth. You're like, dude, I've got 8 appointments. Like we could strike out and I've got 2, 3, 4K, whatever your expectations are on that. That's huge, just for your confidence, right?
Yeah. And you walk in different. You walk into an out of town show way different when you do it that way. So it's,
I feel like so many people, they're like, all right, I got the service event set for right after the show. We'll direct schedule people for that. And then whatever I've got left over, I'll call. You're saying, no. I'm doing it the opposite way. I'm showing up with all of these service event leads already set or service call in home. I love just flipping that one thing. I think does a ton for, and then I just imagine somebody on your team working that show. Just there's no pressure. There's no pressure on them.
There's none. There's no pressure. And that's something I learned early on because, again, our events team here in Alaska, has been relatively small. Warranted, we don't have as many shows as the rest of the states, but I learned that early on because when I went down for these events too, I felt the pressure. I was a young mom. I was not at the level of the business that I'm at now. Yep. And it's like, oh my gosh, am I going to make no money from this? Am I going to lose money? And it was like, okay, how can I ensure my, safety net? And that's having appointments set already.
I just, again and again, I'm coming back to you've described 2 different times now in your life where you've kind of identified a potential problem or stressor. And instead of just stressing out about it, you're like, okay, cool. What's the solution? How can I change this? How can I change the way I feel about this? That self-awareness and then the action, the proactivity from it, I think is huge. Do you have any tools that you're using to help you stay organized with these requests? Or you smile right away. Like I wish it were better, or so I sense that. Okay, any tools you're using? Any tools you're like, all right, here's my next step. Here's my next level of organization.
Oh, that's such a great question. I would say the most work that I need to do in my business is organization.
Okay. So if you're out there and you're going, it's a mess. When I go to make phone time, there are 98 pieces of paper in a circle around me. Hey, you're okay. Peyton's crushing it. You can be too.
It's funny because my table,
I bet.
You can't see right now. Yeah. I don't have my kids until later tonight. They've been at their dad's for a week. And so my table is
the island in the kitchen table, the dining room. It is an office at times. Yeah,
it is. Yeah. So, as far as organization, even though I'm not super organized with my paper stuff that I do take my leads on paper. I'm starting to shift that a little more now that I've had some mentorship and teaching and
Yeah.
but I always write my notes on those papers. Left message on 3/9/24. Talked to, call back, was busy getting kids from the bus. Like I still take those notes. And then I also, like I was saying, if someone does need service before fishing season, and the reason I asked that question, just to clarify, is like if they need to go to the factory, I tell my clients often about 80% of the outdoor knives that I see still need factory service, and I can't do anything on the spot. So, with that being said, do you need these in the next month? If so, I need to get you booked on my this week's appointments, so they have time to go back and come home. Um, but I write all of that on my notes, is like I take notes on each client as much as I'm capable of doing.
And how far do you go in helping them to send them back? I mean, I've heard everything from I give them the website to, dude, I'm going all the way through. I'm packaging. I'm going through. What's your level of involvement in that process?
My level of involvement is how much I have to pour in that area of my business. Like I've got a business cup, I've got a personal cup.
Yep.
And if my business cup is depleted and I just don't have the time, I tell my clients, hey, I'm not able to package these up for you, but I'm going to send you all the information. All you have to do is print out this form. But please, I am your Cutco lady. So if you end up having questions while packaging these up, please, by all means, give me a call. I'm more than happy to help.
So again, it just goes back to you communicating the proper, well, can you count on me for? What can you not count on me for? And that answer changes different times of the year. I want to shift to sales during service calls and service events specifically, because we got a lot of questions on this. Do you feel like your pitch at a service call in home versus a pitch at a service event, does it differ? And if it does, how so?
So what's interesting is I've actually only done 5 service events, and I just recently started doing those back in September was the first time.
So you're heavy in-home service, which by the way, I think a lot of people on my team anyway would probably benefit from before they try to go too heavy service event. What's been before we get into the differentiation question, what's been your reasoning for, hey, I'm going to stay heavy in-home service versus a service event?
So I think that also comes back to what I had talked to Kristen about, was like my foundation. Over the last 7 years, my life has changed a lot, and I've changed a lot. I've grown a lot in my personal life, and I've been a single mom for almost 2 years now. And in those 2 years, I've also been in therapy, and I've also been doing all these things. But what I have looked back and figured out is like I was taking on way too much all at once. And that's why my foundation was so unstable, which now, looking at my foundation, I've worked on my mental health and my physical health and my relationship with my children and my home, and then my business layers. And I've really made those strong so that as I add in the bigger things that I want to in my life, things aren't unstable like they were. And so the reason that I was so heavy in my in-home appointments is because I'm good at them. I'm
You're
really
doubling down on a strength. Yeah.
It was a strength, and it was almost like my survival in my business, because I knew that I could make money there. The reason why I didn't go heavy in gifting was because I knew where I could make money during the turmoil of my personal life. Yep. And the service events, same thing. It's like learning something new. Granted, after learning them, I'm a pro. I have no issues. I had a real
when you wait to learn something and you're mastering a craft that's similar to it, that I hope that's everybody's transition to service events, because you were perfecting a craft that really supports it in your service call.
Yeah.
So you're a big fan now, service events, but my note there is like, hey, there's no need to rush. Make sure you do what you're great at, because it does pay off. Now, that being said, do you feel your pitch differing between the two situations, in-home service and a service event?
So what I noticed between the two is there's a lot of fluff that I have to take out And for me, I'm really big about human connection. And I think that's why my customers trust me so much. And that's why my in-home sales are so high, is because I've built a lot of that connection with my clients. So I had to take out a lot of the fluff and figure out how to make quick connection with my clients. And I learned that pretty quickly with each client that came in for my service events back in September. I was learning very quickly how to make those quick connections, and still using like the having kids thing. That's a big one. That's a very good way for me to make connections, because a lot of people do have kids.
Yeah.
But I don't see it changing too much. It's really just learning how to use your time a little more wisely, and to teach your brain to just, okay, wait, come back, focus. And then as far as like the pitching side, not really different at all. I mean, I talk about their kitchen. I have to help them visualize their kitchen a little more because they're not in it.
Right.
I have to use I would say I have to use a little more brain power, because their home isn't at their disposal to be able to grab things, show me things. So I kind of have to make a lot of visuals for them.
Do you feel like you do anything in creating a buying atmosphere on a service call or at a service event? Like, do you feel like there's a transitional phrasing or any seeds you're planting? I think we talked about a couple earlier that's creating that buying atmosphere. Like you said, when there's a service call where they know they want something, that's fun. We want that. We'll do that all the time. But on one where that's not necessarily their expectation yet, how are you creating that buying atmosphere?
That's a great question. I still say it the same way I do for a service call. Every call that I make, it's like, all right, so just a little rundown of our appointment. When I come out, I'm going to service all your Cutco first. Anything I can't fix or sharpen, I'll help you get it to the factory. Afterward, no pressure, no obligation to buy anything. But just so you know, I do sell Cutco for a living. So it's kind of my job to tempt you on some new things, show you some new items, and take care of any gifting that you have coming up in your personal or your business life. But if you want to get something great, we'll talk about that at the end of your appointment. If not, that's okay too. And so I say basically the same thing for a service event. And that's what I do. I sharpen, I take care of their knives. And then in that transition, I've always found that transition to be hard to strategize. And so I just make it fun. I just make it super light and easy. Like, all right, I'm done sharpening your knives. Let's look at the catalog.
Well, I'm done. Let's buy some stuff. You ready? Let's do this.
Yeah. I mean, it's always been hard for me to make it like a strategy to transition, like when you're in an essay.
We overthink it. We try to make it too hard. And it's just like, dude, just say the thing. Just say the thing. I love by the way, I can tell you've said that on a phone 1 million times. That was great. And I love how you're just like, and then, I do sell Cutco for a living. And I think you said my job is to tempt you. Like, that's a fun way to be able to say what you're doing, but also like you're saying with a smile on your face. Like, you obviously have built rapport and you know these people. I just love how, again, the direct communication on what we're all here for is clear. To your point, it's fun. It is kind of fun. If you're still tracking and categorizing all your own expenses, I have a message from your CPA. Stop. If you're listening to this podcast, chances are your goals include growing your sales. And one way to do that is delegating admin responsibilities by trading time for money. Rising Stock and MyBooks.pro is exactly what you need. Rising Stock is an all-encompassing financial tracking and coaching program where MyBooks.pro is exactly what it sounds like. They just do your books. You can choose to just have them track your expenses or take advantage of everything they have to offer. Do your business and your CPA a favor by scheduling a free intro call today at linktree/CSP60. That's linktr.ee/CSP60. That's linktree/CSP60 with a dot before the 2 E's. Okay, so we've got some people on our team that I think they have lower than they'd prefer average orders on service calls. And I think that frustrates them because I think there's some people where it's like, dude, my average order on service calls as high or higher than a demo. Do you find yourself like dropping down? Do you find yourself more upserving? What do you find helps you increase your average order on service calls? Are you just going in with, hey, is a package. We're going to upgrade you to whatever. Like, what are you focused on? What's helping with that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I've actually taught this to my Anchorage team quite a few times. It's been a really great question.
Well, then we got the right person on the podcast. That's right.
So I would say it's actually a combination of both of what you just said, that dropping down versus like increasing and upselling. When I walk into that, homemakers, galleys, pieces, upgrade. That's what you're going into it with. Learning more about the cookware, the flatware, and packages. And the biggest thing is building that wish list super high. And taking the pressure off of that, one thing that I've learned to do is go, all right, so what we're going to do is we're going to go through the catalog, and anything that you like, I'm going to write down. Don't worry, this is not a buying list. This is things that you want. And if at the end of it, I might surprise you, you might be like, oh yeah, I can get everything. Or you might not like the number. Super easy, super simple. We'll take off the least priority items until we get you to a comfortable number.
And I mean, I'm not even in a demo and I'm like, I feel comfortable with this. Let's make this wish list. You also totally took me back when I was a rep. I listened to Hal Elrod had a Vector Connect like audio called like average order, increase your average order. And I probably listened to it 1,000 times. And that's exactly what I loved, like building that wish list and building up as, hey, if Cutco were free, like what would you pick? We'll go from there. Do you find there's anything that as CSPs, we kind of stray away from, and you have to be reminded that, oh man, I used to do that. I need to go back and start doing that again. And if so, like what's on that list that you've had to do before in your career?
Smile when you dial.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it just brings it back to being fun and smile when you dial. That's a big one that's like, we forget about it and we kind of like, we get into these business modes.
Yes. We think we're like, oh, I'm done with that because I'm a real knife salesman now. So that's such a great point. We do, our brains we get a little bit of recognition, or we do well, or, we do start to develop somewhat of a business. Maybe we have a VA or somebody working with us, and we almost like forget like, oh, I'm not doing the little tiny things that got me there. Because to your point, it's never an emergency. It's knives. Sometimes we're the ones that make it seem more important than knives.
Yeah.
On us. So.
And wish list.
Okay. So wish list and the, smile when you die. I love smile. I tell my reps that every week in training, smile when you die. With the wish list, what have you seen yourself like stray away from and come back to that? Like, what have you tried to make that into that?
Well, I mean, and in the beginning, I was like trying to save wish lists. I occasionally do, like certain people, they're like, can you please write this down? And I do, and I go back and put that in my CRM. But I don't know. I just, I find that it gives you and the client a direction to go, because it's really hard to be like, okay, what's next if you don't have an idea of what they want, and you can't really do your job effectively if you're not looking at like the bigger picture of what they would want. You can't do the whole, well, I'll buy you this, or, that turbo incentive. You can't have that if you don't know what they want. And I think I've heard it over and over again. But last year at Net, Curtis said, people buy what they want, not what they need. And I think that's just stuck with me more and more and more. And it's like, okay, let's write down everything that you want. I want $1 million. I want a boat. I can write that down. It doesn't mean I'm going to get those things, but I'm going to write them down. And that wish list probably is the biggest thing, is just writing things down, getting an idea.
I love that because, yeah, when I go home and look around our home, there are very few things we need. Yeah, very, very few. Yeah. And I think just because sometimes that's a very limiting mindset for a Cutco rep. Well, they got what they needed. That can be true, but definitely not helpful when we're talking about wish lists and helping them realize what do you want. Switching gears a little bit, as a mom of two, we got a lot of parents and aspiring parents in our CSP world, and I'd love to hear your answer to this too, as a dad of quite a few little girls. Any keys that jump out to you in creating rhythm between having kids, but also having a business. What's worked for you? What have you learned? What have you learned through messing up? What have you gotten better at? What's on that list for you?
Oh, I'm always messing up and making mistakes.
Amen. Amen.
Yeah, there's any parent knows like there's no blue book. There's nothing that tells you how to do this.
Yeah.
And every day that you think that you've got it figured out, then your daughter does something, you're like, I don't have this figured out. Not at all. Um, Grace.
Yeah.
That's I could preach about just grace and giving
And
yourself,
just to be clear too, like grace with yourself.
yeah, yourself, your children, your business, your clients when they do get upset that you're not able to follow through with something. I'm to a stage where it's a little different. My kids, 5 and 7,
Yeah.
they're getting to that different stage, and so it's not as demanding. But I will say, anytime that I mess up, anytime that I don't do something right, I just have to give myself a lot of grace, and I have to give my clients grace, because sometimes it is frustrating for them if I drop the ball on something. If I say I'm going to do something and then something comes up with my children and I'm not able to, or I forget, or whatever happens, I do have the not happy clients, and I just have to, give them grace. And as far as balancing things with my kids, I just do it with them. They're learning as I'm learning, and we're just a team, and we're figuring it out as we go. Solution oriented is really big for me, and I think you've picked up on that on some of my.
That is we're putting that on a t-shirt for you. That's your thing for sure.
Yeah, I just find a way. You just you keep figuring it out, and life is literally about experiences and learning from them. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just learning as I go. I don't have a blueprint for it, but I will say that there's a lot of good that comes out of being a business owner and a mom at the same time.
Oh my gosh. Absolutely. When we're doing things the right way over an extended period of time, it creates a lot of opportunities for you that if you didn't own your own business, that you probably wouldn't have. It's double edged, right? Like it can be harder, it can be easier. And just big kudos to you. I watching my wife be a full-time mom is like, wow, that's hard. But to imagine her also running a Cutco business on top of that, like, holy cow, Peyton, that's really, really special and really awesome. Like, it doesn't sound like you do, but man, don't take that for granted. How you should be so proud of yourself. That's really, really, really awesome. That you identified it as an opportunity, and then it's like, cool, we're gonna come along bumps in the road, and we'll figure it out. We'll find a solution. Loved the one-word answer of grace, because so often that is what we need. I think there was a point in my life where I realized nobody else had everything figured out either, so I didn't have to act like it, like I did. And I was like, oh, okay, we're all just kind of messing up and showing back up. Okay, cool. I can do this. What's last question for you? And might take a second to think about, and that's okay. You might have multiple answers. That's okay too. What's something that I probably should have asked you today that would have helped our team?
That is a really good question. What is something that keeps me going during the down?
Oh, okay. Well, then please let me ask you, what keeps you rolling during the funks, or sales is up and down. There's ebbs and flows during those valleys. What keeps you moving?
Yeah, that question has been asked to me multiple times by reps, by managers, because I have them. And something in Alaska that we all experience heavily is our seasonal depression time. Sun goes away. And I noticed pretty quickly, probably about 2.5 years, 3 years into the business. I'm like, okay, I'm seeing a pattern of where my sales go down versus my sales are up. And they are right on track with the seasonal depression time. And one thing that really has helped me keep going is learning to trust that the averages always work themselves out. That's a line that I live by in my business, is that you're going to have, everyone talks about like, okay, bad numbers. You close 7 out of 10 appointments in a week. Well, you might have a week that you close 10 out of 10, but that means next week you could potentially only close on 4. And it's like, yeah, if you're looking at 1 week or 1 day or 1 order, or even 10 orders, you might not see those averages. But if you look at 3 months, 6 months, a year, 2, 3 years, and you start looking at that bigger picture, which is what we're doing. We're in business. We're not in a hobby. We're not in, a clock in, clock out job. We're in business and we're choosing to be here. That's what business owners choose to do. If you can look at that bigger picture and say to yourself over and over again, the numbers always work themselves out, then you're fine. You're fine. You're going to have highs. You're going to have lows. And that's what the whole point of an average is. That average income, that's what you're making on average. Some months you're going to make more. Some you're going to make less. Some shows you're going to get a ton of leads. Some you're going to get none at all. It's like I just did a show this last weekend. I sold 2 orders. I got 1 lead. That's very poor for me. Alaska State Fair, I sold 125 orders. I collected probably 120 leads. They work each other out. So it's just that confidence to be able to get you through those lows typically comes from knowing that low is only going to last so long.
Oh, so much gold there, especially for somebody who's a little bit newer to CSP, who's in one of those swings and like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? You've been through it, but also you have the maturity now of looking at, again, you're in it for the long haul. You're thinking about that big picture. There's probably somebody thinking you just had a horrible show this weekend and you sound this happy. Like, what's going on? Thank you so much for taking the time to think about what might be most beneficial. Because like I said before when we were prepping, like as the DVM who has not opened a sample kit for himself in over a decade, man, I forget where reps are at and what they need, but man, you guys know, you're living it every single day. So seriously, we're in such a unique situation where, no one's required to give back, take an hour of their time and record a podcast for some of our up and coming leaders. But so many people like you, Peyton, say yes. They don't even think about it. It's like, yes, absolutely. Let's figure out a time and a day. And I'm so thankful for that. And getting to hear about your story, and some of your answers were so much just like, man, you're in this for the right reasons. Like, I bet people absolutely positively love that Peyton Kellar is their Cutco girl, and that so many people that I interview are so amazing, so talented, but really, really fun when I meet somebody who's such a great person too. So seriously, thank you so much for taking the time today. This was awesome.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to kind of inspire from a different perspective. I'm not the typical Cutco rep, and like I said, Craigslist, 18, like with the baby, like I've done a lot of things that not everyone has done, and I faced a lot of challenges over the years, and challenge even just being in Alaska. It's different. It really is a different atmosphere here, and we've really had to build Alaska into something really positive as far as Cutco goes. And we've worked really hard to do that. And I'm grateful to be a part of it. I'm grateful to represent the state of Alaska in the way that I do. And like I said, not an emergency, not a big deal, but being able to represent Alaska as like the Cutco lady and creating these relationships with customers here, I'm super grateful. It's been a pleasure. I get to do so much and meet so many cool people.
Well, I think you're winning. Keep winning. It's pretty fun to watch.
I feel like I'm winning.
Well, if you enjoyed today, guys, be sure to subscribe, turn on those notifications so you don't miss the next 15 minutes of Flames version of this episode or our next 60 minutes fire coming up. Next interview is with Brandon Brown. Don't miss it. We'll see you next time. Bye. Thanks for listening. And for some of you watching, I want to remind you that all resources from today can be found at linktree/CSP60. That's linktr.ee/CSP60. That's linktree/CSP60 with a dot before the EE. If you want to be a member of our live Zoom audience for one of our upcoming shows, email bwiggins@vectormarketing.com. That's BWIGGINS@vectormarketing.com. If you loved what you heard today, I'd be honored if you followed, subscribed, or even rated us on whatever platform you use to find your 60 minutes of fire. We'll see you next time.